Next up, I'm going to work on the JCMs for the legs. The first JCM I'm fixing is the thigh left. Now you have to make sure that your resolution is set to base, and turn smoothing. If you're going to use smoothing, make sure that it's not colliding against Genesis but turned off. Otherwise the hand poking into the side of the dress there is going to distort the fabric. Now this is the time I can actually take the opportunity to fix the middle of the texture completely. Get everything evened out. Export, import with reverse deformation in the studio. Now I'm going to do the same for bend 57 forward. Alright, I have one area at the top of the dress that I need to fix. So I'm going to export it, import it into my modeler. Fix any texture distortions that I can see at the same time. I'm also evening out the folds just a little bit so that I have less texture distortion. I also want to clear any distortions from the morph, so I'm going to favorite it and clear it with the geometry editor. Next up is 90. And that's a custom one I do for dresses myself. It's not included in a figure, but I find for 90 is good for sitting poses. It means that I can adjust it a bit better for when the figure is sitting. Get it all evened out. And just working my way right around and making sure that there's no problem areas. I'm going to import it, and because this is a custom morph, I have to set up I have to ERC freeze it. So I'm going to clamp it to 0, dial it up, select the thigh, left thigh bend, go to the bend and right click on ERC freeze. Turn off everything except the morph you want to ERC freeze to. It'll zero everything out, and now when you bend it, it should work. I also have to fix this one for 115 up. That's quite a lot of poke through. If it was just a little bit, I'd leave it, but I think that's more than what collision can handle. It's always a bit trickier to fix the 115 up, just because the mesh intersects in on itself. The thigh pushes right into the stomach, so it takes a fair amount of fixing. I get it as good as I can get it for that area. Bring it out. Almost there. The last little bit. Okay, I also have to fix again at the back. Make sure that there's no problem areas. Poke throughs. There's a little bit of poke through there. Yeah, I'm seeing that the dress is folding in on itself a little bit, so I'm expanding the fold so that there's no poking through, which causes a slight issue with the texture there. So I'm going to have to fix that, get it as good as I can, or use Dash Studio to pull it a bit straighter. Okay, so I imported it with reverse deformations, and that's not quite how I want it, so I'm going to have to spend a bit more time to get the texture distortion on that off. But you do want the folds not to poke in through itself, because I suspect that's going to cause deforce issues when you simulate it. Alright, do the same for the leg bent back. And now I'm going to work on the feet and the shins. Alright, I'm noticing that I've got a JCM left there that I need to turn off. So I'm going to currently I'm going to set use limits, and I'm going to set both to 0. And I'm going to change to shape, because that will save out a JCM then when I save the dress. Right. I'm noticing a little bit movement, so I've got a weight map left somewhere. Maybe on there. Let's see. See, I think it might be on the toes. Yep, there it is. Okay. So just paint it out. It's a very light map, so it shouldn't make any difference. Probably when I smooth something out, it transferred over onto that area. Alright, so next up, see. Okay, no more straight JCMs. I'm going to bend the shin to 90 to fix the shin JCM. Alright, so I really need to take out the JCM, set it to 0 before I export, because that's very distorted. Make sure you don't collide against Genesis. Copy the name and then set the bend to 0. Now I can export it to my modeler. Just going to clean it as best as I can, making sure that there's no folds that's too close to each other, because often that'll give problems when you're doing deforce simulations. Okay, I'm going to have a slight problem there with the texture. I've got to fix that. Again, there's a intersection of the cloth, so I'm going to fix that with the JCM. Okay, now with JCM turned on again, I'm going to import it, reverse deformations on, and there we go, that looks good. Can bend it all the way up. Now it won't ever be needed to go all the way up like that, but just to test it, I think I need to just turn off the shin bend there. Let's see what it looks like when it's set to 0. Yeah, I think that's as good as it's going to be. So I'm going to actually just limit this, set both to 0, and again should be to a shape, not pose. Now that I'm finished with the shins, I'm going to set up a JCM with both legs, both thighs bent forward, and I'm going to call it left right. And there's some texture distortion there. Just, that clean as good as I can. This is mainly to get a good sitting look, a good sitting pose for the dress when both thighs are used at the same time, bent forward. Alright, I'm going to import it, reverse deformation on, dial it up, minimum to 0. Alright, that looks better for sitting positions. So okay, turning and smoothing fixes a bit of the texture distortion, so I think I'm going to export it once just with smoothing turned on at the default of 2. And that'll even out the UV map a lot. Okay, bring it back in. And it's just a little bit, it fixes a lot of UV. There we go. It just tightens it up a little bit. And again, I'm going to clear the vertices that's not used. Favorite it, making sure that there's no other favorites like that, because you don't want to clear from that morph as well. Alright. I'm going to set up a multi-dimensional property. I click on the dress, the left thigh bend, the right thigh bend, bend on the parameters, find that one, and accept. And I'm alt-clicking on each of these dials, which will reset it to its default state to make sure that it's not a setting in there. Sometimes I've had it where it's a setting was left behind. And now I'm just going to adjust the 2 legs and make sure that the morph only kicks in when I have both the left and right thighs bent. Alright, so if it's just the one leg, it's not kicked in. Okay. Now I'm testing, make sure the other leg, and it's not in there. So now when I bend both legs together, it should show up. And yep, there it is. Okay, so everything's working the way it should. Alright, save out the dress. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for the shins. Bend both at 90, and you can see the dress intersects itself quite badly. So I'm going to select the right shin on the dress and adjust it out, and the same with the left shin, just so I can get something decent to make more from. It's, I think a bit more maybe. Yeah, I'm going to take could add some more. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, now I'm going to export it as a more for shins left and right together. Fix it in the modeler. And again, try and get the folds to be even and not intersecting. Okay, reset both the thighs that you just used. I just alt click on the dial and that'll set it back to its default position. And again the same, going to select the shin bends, and then on the under parameters I'm going to select currently used and bend, go to the multi-dimensional property parameter, select my morph, and again, so now I'm going to pose it. I still see a bit of poke through, but there is a way to fix that. I have 1 or 2 more JCMs to do. So next I'm going to look at what happens when I bend the thighs in, and usually that compresses the dress a lot, so I'm going to try and optimize that a little bit. So I'm going to put the thigh in on 15. It's got some intersection of the folds. I'm going to try and improve that a little bit. Okay, again I'm going to separate the folds away from each other just to make it a bit better and avoid simulation issues. Keep on working my way around. You have to be careful with too much texture distortion in this area. Okay, that's a lot of smoothing. Let me see what it looks like in Dash Studio. I'm going to import it with reverse deformation on. Okay, I'm going to set minimum to 0, maximum to 100. Dial it up. I'm going to turn smoothing on to see how much I get, how much it's changing on the UV mapping. Okay, it's fixing quite a bit, so that's good. 5, maybe 10. 10 is actually pulling the distortion on the UV texture map together quite well. Yeah, I think I'm going to use 10. I don't like using it that high, but in this case it fixes the UV map significantly. I think that's about as good as what I'm going to get it. Export it and then bring it back into the studio. I'm going to clear the vertices again in the top area, especially since I used smoothing on such a high setting. Alright, now I'm going to ERC freeze it first. Make sure that you only have the morph that you want to ERC freeze selected. If you have anything else selected, chances are it's going to crash the studio. Okay, so it's still crunching, but at least it's a little bit better than before. Alright, now I'm going to do the same on the left side. Same process all the way. Again, select the thigh, export it, fix it in the modeler. And then ERC freeze it. And now you have both sides. I'm going to create control bones. Select the joint editor tool, click on your left thigh band, right click on it, and then create control bones. I usually rename this little bit to handles and accept. Now it's gone through and it created thigh bend, thigh twist, shin and foot for you. I'm going to do the same with the right side. Create control bones. Change it to handle. And now it's added all the parts. So now I'm going to click on the bits that's not included there and hide it in the scene view. And I'm going to do the same for the left side. I'm going to hide the toes, the metatarsals, the foot. And then everything else is good. Alright, next up I'm going to go to the selection groups and I'm going to select the new groups that I just made. So for left thigh, left shin, for example, I'll add the left shin, the handle that I just created. Thigh bend. So what that does is you can now click on the outfit and it'll select that bone instead of Genesis underneath. Okay, now that that's all sorted, I'm going to do one final change. When you bring the feet in close together, standing straight normally, especially for dresses, it brings it in too much. So I like to add a little extra morph in there that just separates it out a bit more and stops it from squishing in the middle. So I brought the legs together on Genesis, and as you can see, it's very close together. I'm going to export it as a left right. Usually, okay, but what I want to do is bring it out some more. So if I reset it to 0, the legs are in and the dress is hanging as normal, but that's too much. So I'm going to play around a little bit to see how far out I want to bring the handles to use as my morph. Okay, I think 5 looks like it's a good setting to adjust out. 3. Okay, that gives me a nice drape even when Genesis have their legs closer together. So I'm going to export that and I'm going to edit this morph in my modeler. Everything looks good. I don't see any folds intersecting each other. So I'm going to export that. Okay, now I'm resetting the handles that I moved out, and then I'm importing the morph I just created. Okay, select your dress. Okay, and I'm going to set the morph to 0 for minimum and dial it up. Alright. So I'm going to do a multi-dimensional property preset. Which means this morph will only kick in when both legs are moving in closer to each other. Okay, 0 Genesis. Alright, now she's in the A pose, and now when I bring in the legs closer together, you can see that it goes up to a point, and then after that it doesn't go any further. And that gives you a nice even drop without the crunching in the middle of the dress. Okay, save your outfit, and now when I apply a pose, I got rid of most of the poke throughs that I could see before. And if there's any further, a user can just click on the body handles. I'm noticing something in the foot there. Okay, I think there's a JCM I missed. 0 pose. I just think it's something on the foot. Bend down. No, it's not bending down. Oh, it's the bend up. Alright, so all I have to do is go and neutralize that morph. The foot up, use limits, and I set to 0 and 0. Tick off autofollow and then shape. And accept. And that fixed it. Now I've got to do the same for the other side. Yeah, that totally fixed it. Make sure the toes are clean. Yep, no effect. Do the same for the right side. Yep, there's the JCM. Limits, use limits, 0, 0. Untick autofollow and change it to modify shape so that it'll save out when I save the dress. And I think that is the last of the JCMs. Okay. And now I just save my dress.